welcome back to Take a Mulligan podcast. We are so glad you're joining with us today. And today, Brian and I are going to talk about something a little bit more challenging. So, Brian, how are you feeling? We went through something pretty traumatic here just wow, a couple months ago here already.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how time's flown by already so quickly. Yeah, so we lost our sister. Our oldest sister had passed away. I guess now almost 2 months, right? It's been
Yeah.
so it's very sudden, so it's still processing, and a lot of time I don't know. I'm still trying to process it. It just doesn't feel real sometimes.
No, it don't feel real at all. Like to
Yeah,
me. And I'm still struggling with mom and dad's death. Like, not like I'm upset about it, like kind of thing. Like, it's been wow, actually mom's almost 4 years now, right? Is that
yeah, yeah. Dad's
is it
been
more than that?
almost. It'll be 8 this year, right?
2009.
Dad.
Wait, mom was 2019.
Mom
That's
was
5 years.
2019. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
this
five,
year will
six
be
years ago,
6
right?
years. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, see,
And
time
dad was 3
flies. And
years before her, so yeah.
I'm still trying to get used to the fact that like she's gone. Like it's still weird,
Yeah, I know.
and now
I
here
know.
Patty's gone.
Yeah, it's hard
Wow.
to I mean it's anybody that's lost a loved one, obviously it's very hard. Losing your parents is hard. Both of them is difficult, but then losing a sibling is just kind of on a different level. It's kind of surreal. It feels strange. She was
It-
still very young in my mind.
yeah, she was 66.
66.
It's
That's
yeah,
pretty young. I still
that's
consider
how
that
I feel.
young. So
Oh wow.
yeah, so it's and just just as a reminder, I'm the youngest of the six. Kenny's in the middle. Our oldest sister Patty, who just passed away, she was 15 years older than me. She was what, 6 years older than you?
Yeah, 6 years older.
Okay, yeah.
So
So I mean, there's a
you don't remember anything growing up, pretty much.
no. I mean, when she was graduating high school, I guess I was what, like 2 or 3. So I mean, I think I remember like vaguely like a high school graduation or celebration, that kind of stuff. But that's the first memory I probably have of her was at that time period.
Okay. So I remember her. I mean, she was very active as a big sister. She was the planner, the organizer. I think she loved being a big sister. She used to take me for walks. We used to go up to this house about 2 miles away. We called it the Duck House because they had it was on a major road. I mean, major back then, there's hardly any cars come down, but it had a stripe down the middle, so it's like that's a major road. And in the back there's a creek that flowed through the backyard, and then there's a pond, and so there were ducks that used to gather there. So she's like, "Oh, you want to come feed the ducks?" So we'd go out and feed the ducks. She used to plan backyard carnivals. I remember that stuff. That was,
Yeah, I
and
remember hearing stories about that stuff.
she went elaborate. I mean, we had all the little booths set up so people could come in our backyard, and I don't know if we had a fence at that point or not, so you had sort of a built-in entranceway, but people come in, and maybe they paid to get in. I don't remember, but then they would play games and then
And
win
people
little
actually came from
prizes.
the neighborhood?
They did. I mean, back then,
That's
when something
crazy.
happened in the neighborhood, everybody goes.
Yeah, I guess there's nothing else to
And
do.
so we had like the penny pitch where if there's a plates on and floating in water, you try to get a penny on the plate, and Dad had built a spinning wheel so you could win a prize. I don't know if it's guess the number or something like that, out of a bicycle tire, like an old bicycle tire.
Yeah, I think I remember that being around in the basement somewhere, that tire.
So that was cool. It was like cool stuff. And then she was also, it wasn't just about. So we did like plays, to do a performance, come see the show at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something. Magic shows, haunted house. And then she was the one who she really enjoyed, like, mom and dad's anniversaries coming up, and they're,
Mm.
I think when they hit 15 years anniversary, so we were still little kids. Now it had to be like 20 because
Well, I
I'm trying
remember
to
the
think,
25th anniversary. That was a
because then
big
she would have
deal.
been the which anniversary?
Their
25th.
25th was a big one we did.
So maybe it was 15. I mean, she might have been babysitting money or something like that, but we all chipped in, and I don't know if it's from paper route or what. I remember chipping in and sending them to an overnight at a hotel somewhere. We thought that was
Oh,
the
wow.
coolest thing
That's
because it
awesome.
was their anniversary. And yeah, we just thought it was cool. I don't know, we didn't pass that down to our kids, so they didn't do that for us.
I
But
was
anyway,
thinking the same thing.
but But yeah, she did. She made them a cake. I remember her making them, a three-tiered cake and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah,
she
I mean, I think I
really,
remember, like, she did seem like she really enjoyed the big sister role, or being the eldest and
yeah,
having that authority
she did.
of
She
being
felt,
the eldest, and kind of felt like she had the responsibility that she had to do this and that because she was the oldest. And I mean,
yeah,
even in recent years, you kind of still get that sense, even though she didn't really hold that role, I don't think. But um,
she
yeah, I
felt
think
responsibility to,
yeah, well, honestly, after mom passed away, it was almost like instantaneous that she tried to take on that role. Like,
yeah,
even for me and my family and my kids, like, she would always try to give them stuff on their birthdays, and, kind of some stuff like mom would do. She definitely does it in a different way than mom ever would have done it in her uniqueness. But I always got a sense, and even my wife Kim would say the same thing. Like, she's like seems like she's trying to take on the grandmother role for our kids because there is none.
yeah,
And she was never married. She never had any kids. Um, so that part of it is a little easier, that there wasn't anybody left behind besides her immediate family,
yeah.
because I think that would have been a lot harder through this whole process with her.
Now I know, when we said we were on this podcast, we really want to talk about the other side of this issue, and that's not just dealing with the death of Patty, but she struggled with a mental illness all her life, pretty much, and
Yeah, I
and
mean, that
that we thought,
all my life that I remember her was, she had already been dealing with that, because I think from what you guys told me, by the time she was starting to deal with that stuff, was young. So again, if I was like 5 when she was 18 and she was already starting to struggle with that, those are probably some of my bigger memories, is at that age range.
yeah. Now I don't know. What do you remember, like your first instance of her being off? Let's say.
Well, for me, like, I remember when I kind of vaguely remember graduation. Like I said, I was probably, I guess, probably 3 or 4 when she graduated high school, and then she went on to nursing school, and that was a 2-year program. I remember that she was at St. Francis. I remember that whole thing. I think I remember her
Yeah.
graduating from nursing school, and it was a big deal.
Okay.
I'm sure I kind of vaguely remember a party. All those kind of memories do seem vague in my mind. And then I just remember that she really wasn't around because she wasn't living at home. I kind of remember maybe visiting her apartment, I think in Trenton, right? Is where she was living
Yeah, she
when
did
she moved out.
while she was nursing.
Okay. Yeah. So I remember kind of visiting that a little bit, but I don't really remember her coming back home for like dinners and stuff on Sunday, or coming around much. And then I
Okay.
feel like it just like shifted to when I was like 12 or 13. That was kind of probably the next phase of memories I started having. And at that point, I think I remember that things were off definitely by that point, and that's kind of all I remember.
Mm.
Do you
I
remember when
remember.
she started changing, like her personality started changing?
Yeah, yeah. You know what? Part looking back, I wonder. You wonder, is there something always offered? Did something traumatic happen that she experienced that like
Yeah.
created the start of it?
Well,
And I remember.
whenever we talked about it, I know you guys always mentioned that you thought it might have been that episode when she was robbed at Halo Farms, that we didn't know if that triggered
Yeah,
something or if something was going on before that.
yeah, that was traumatic, but I think that was almost when she was coming back around, I thought. And again, I don't remember the year that actually happened.
I thought everybody always told me
Um,
she was like 16 or 17 when that happened, or 18 maybe. I don't know. I guess it was
oh, so
before.
that was young. Okay, so that might have
Yeah.
been a
Yeah.
traumatic, but again, but then it didn't show itself till she was 22, 23. So that was weird.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because she was definitely out of nursing school, which would have put her at 2021. She
Yeah.
had been nursing for a few years. And then I remember, like, the first things I remember is like her fighting with mom and dad, like
Mm.
at times. And that was just weird. I
Did she fight
remember,
with you guys too at that time? Like, did
no,
she
I don't
seem like she was
remember.
more angry with you guys?
No, I don't remember that at all. I just remember, and I
Okay.
don't know what it was about. I don't know if she would do something weird or something. Mom and dad just thought, "Why are you doing that?" And it started an argument or something. I remember Denise, our younger sister was who out there. She, well, my younger sister, your older sister, but but I remember her saying, because she used to room with her. They shared a room,
Yeah.
And I remember her saying there were some things that were off. And but again, I don't remember exactly what time that was, whether that was
What kind
late
of
high
stuff
school.
did she notice? Do you know?
I remember her hearing speak in different voices, kind of thing.
Really?
So that's creepy.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think we ever experienced that other times with her.
Yeah.
Um, but it definitely, she had her highs and lows kind of thing. And again, some of the stories is vague because there's so many years there. But probably the most traumatic one was she would she would go through these cycles. So it was, she'd start going bad and then get to a point where it was really bad. And I think one of the most traumatic ones was, and you were probably a little older at this point because Barry's 3 years older than I am. So he was probably, man, 23, 24, somewhere around there. So I was probably just in
Just
my
out of
early
just out of
20s.
college then?
Yeah,
That
he
was
was
when he
just,
came back home after college. Cause yeah. So I was like probably what, like 12, 13, 14-ish, I guess,
he might
somewhere
even
there.
still been in college at that point and just home.
Well, yeah, because I remember when he headed off to college, I can't remember, did she come back home at that point? Because I just remember at one point she came back home to live, and things definitely, I just kind of remember her as always being off. I don't really remember her any other way besides struggling with mental illness. And,
Okay.
it
How
was,
old was she?
uh,
How are you when she came back home?
well, that's what I'm saying is that I think the first time might have been when I was like 13 or 14 or something, or maybe even
Okay.
12. Because all I remember is the first time she came back home, and I don't even know what time or when she had actually officially got diagnosed, but it was, manic depression at the time was the diagnosis, and then somehow they shifted it to bipolar was the diagnosis. Same thing, they just called it something different. But
Yeah.
that's, I mean, that's what she dealt with. That's what she struggled with, as far as we knew. That's what was officially diagnosed for her for many years. So I just remember when she came back home, I believe that's when she lived in the basement. And I
Yeah.
remember her living down there, and it was kind of I mean, we didn't have a finished basement. She was just living in, a basement and had a bed down there. And I always remember she was always writing stuff, always writing stuff. She would write notes, she'd put them on the wall, she'd have notebooks all over the place. And even that memory there, I mean, she always loved music. She always wanted to sing. She was always practicing music. She never played an instrument, but she would always practice singing and had music books open.
Yeah.
And I feel like at that time things started to get heated again with mom and dad and her. Like I feel like they fought a lot. Um,
Yeah. And that,
I never remember her fighting with me, and I do kind of remember probably that first time that she did kind of have that big sister motherly outlook over me as the youngest. I kind of remember at times. I don't remember really
okay.
doing anything with her specifically, like you had experienced, but I just remember that despite the fighting and everything, I feel like she still did try to have that like older sister, you know, look out for the younger brother kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, it seems she went. I mean, she went through cycles where she was working. I mean, first she was working as a nurse when things started going a little off, and then she wasn't able to work as a nurse anymore. So she'd get into babysitting or something like that just to try to make ends meet.
Oh,
And
so she did stop nursing for a while in the beginning? Because I remember her still
yeah,
nursing
she
even the last episode she had when I was older. She went back to nursing again. She was doing home care and stuff.
yeah. So once
Okay.
she would go through the cycle and then she'd end up in the hospital usually.
Yeah.
And then once she came out, she was back on control, and a lot of people struggle with mental illness. So, I mean, it's not
Yeah.
uncommon that, she got on the right meds, everything's great, and she's back to
Right.
normal, at least what it seemed. And she'd go through that and then she'd go through another phase. So, yeah, I think there was one time where mom and dad were able to convince her to go in and get help. One of the biggest ones I remember is when Barry and she was living in an apartment with some other girls. Actually, one's happens to be my wife
It's
right
your
now,
wife.
and so Julie was her roommate, and they she was off. I mean, she was really off. So they called up mom and dad. Actually, Julie's the one who called them and said, "Hey, she's off," and so we're like, okay, we'll come down and talk to her because she was just doing really, really bizarre stuff. And so we basically, Barry and I volunteered to, hey, mom, dad, we'll go. We'll try to convince her to go to the hospital. So I think we showed up like 6, 7 o'clock at night and 11 o'clock at night, and we still hadn't convinced her that, hey, Patty, you need help. can we take you down to the hospital and try to get you out? Because she just, it was like she couldn't put two and two together. She just didn't
Yeah.
see it. She didn't understand it.
I remember that phase because I definitely remember that because I think that was when you guys were probably getting close to moving out of the house yourself, right? Or
Yeah.
building your room upstairs.
That was, we were still building our room upstairs. So that was
Okay.
probably probably, I'm guessing 2 or 3 years before we became believers, for became
Okay.
Christ followers. So that was probably, and we did that in 90 or 85. So we're probably talking 82, 83. So it's
Yeah. So
somewhere around
that's
there.
when you were finishing up high school. So
Yeah.
yeah, I remember that phase because I remember hearing about you guys going out to try to help her, and then
Okay.
I guess the next thing I remember, she did end up in the hospital at that point, right?
She did. And I think that's one of the hardest things that, I think when, and it was for mom and dad, was
Mm.
they they were helpless. Like, you can't,
Yeah.
unless she goes in herself. She's 18 years old, she's adult, and unless she's a harm to herself or to others,
Right. You
they
can't put
can't
her
put her
anywhere.
in.
Yeah.
And then the worst thing is, anytime she would get help, like if she went in, they unfortunately are not allowed to tell mom and dad anything. So
Right.
it's not like, hey, can we monitor her meds? Can we do it? No, we can't tell you. And the laws are so bizarre.
Yeah, because I mean, she's an adult, but she's an unstable adult because she keeps having these same issues.
Yep. And so mom and dad through all those years never were able to be a real help to her because as soon as she went, she would get into a treatment, whatever that was and however long that lasted, and then she'd come out and she was good. She'd start getting a job again, and sometimes it was very stable and she was
Yeah.
back to Patty, we knew
Yeah,
for a
and
time.
I mean, that's what I
Yeah.
remember is that I don't know if it was a time after she came out of there. Is that when she came back home and lived in our old room?
Maybe.
Because
And then
then you
she,
guys were out of the house. Me and Sean were living in your room, and then she took over the back room that used to be our room.
yes, she
That's what
did
I
that for
remember.
a
Then
while,
she
right?
lived there for a while, and then that's when things were getting worse. I mean, the notes were getting more rampant, and the conversations. So that's when I was probably getting older into like later high school age, college age, I guess. Because I remember, unless there was one other one before that, but I just remember when we went through that phase, and maybe this was like the third time already. I just remember mom and dad looking so helpless because again, they could only do so much.
Yeah.
And I think we as siblings felt bad for mom and dad and kept trying to warn them, like, you can't enable her. She has to get the help she needs as hard as this is. And I can't even imagine how hard that would be as a parent to have to
I
watch your child
know.
go through that. And I can picture still in my mind today the time that they had to, and I think Sean and I convinced them a lot. I forget how much you guys had input or Denise had input, but I remember convincing mom and dad that they had to do something. And at that point, I remember they called the police. I remember the police coming to our house, and she was kind of screaming and yelling, going out the door with them. And they took her to the hospital at that point. I don't know how they did that because, like you said, normally it's if they're not a harm to themselves or others, they can't do anything. So I'm not sure exactly how we got to that point that time, but that was the time I remember because it wasn't long before I got married that then she was in there, um, and then came back out again. And then at that point, she went into an apartment from there.
Okay.
So I guess it was probably at least two or three times, at least from talking to all our siblings. I think we were all
Oh
kind of
yeah.
remembering there had to be at least two or three times she was in and out of the hospital, and then that one, and then I think she was again good for about 10 years. And it was always the same pattern. It was like, no matter where she
It
lived,
was.
we would get a call from someone that she was living with. You got to come get her because she's doing really odd, strange things, and I can't have her living here anymore. That was kind of
Yeah.
the main theme. So that last time when she was living in an apartment with an older woman, and the older woman knew mom. So I remember her calling mom and saying, I can't have her live here anymore. It's too much.
Yeah.
And
And
I
it gets
I remember too
dangerous.
younger. Yeah, yeah. And I remember younger too when I forget at what point where she was, but I just remember I think she was like living with somebody down in like Medford, New Jersey or something. And I just remember like she would never call mom. Like mom had no idea where she was, what she was doing. So again,
Hmm.
as a parent of a young adult, obviously she has her own right to do what she wants as an adult, but somebody dealing with those issues, like of course you're going to worry way more about are they safe? Are they going to be okay? What are they doing? And we didn't have cell phones then, so it was just wherever you could
Yeah.
find a phone if you found a phone to call or check in. And I remember mom always being very upset that she never knew where she was or what she was doing.
Yeah, and that is hard if you don't know where your kid is. That's as an
Yeah.
adult, it's you hope you can at least call, say, hey, how things going, that kind of stuff. But you
Yeah.
couldn't, they didn't have that relationship with her because that was lost somewhere,
Yeah.
And again, the oldest child, so she was very close to mom for the longest time, and then all of a sudden just out there. Um,
Yeah, and you wonder if a lot of that flipped when, of course, they had to show the tough love on her. If
yeah,
that changed the relationship dynamic at that point and was never the same.
and that's the hardest thing. And again, we weren't in mom and dad's shoes, but like the hardest thing I think dealing with mental illness is they're not of right mind. So even like it is really hard to draw the line between they're being rebellious
Yeah.
and they're just being stubborn, and so they're not, or they honestly don't know how to do this,
Yeah. Like they're not in the right mindset to even be able to
Yeah.
control anything or I mean,
It's
I just
almost
remember when we would have, when she was getting really bad again, um, like before I was moving out of the house to get married, it was just like you'd have these conversations with her, you try to stop her. I mean, Sean, I mean, we were like, I don't know, like 19, 20, 21 or something. I mean, we were young, but I remember having these conversations with her and with mom and dad, and it was just all blown out arguments. And just the conversation just went in circles. Like you had no idea what she was even talking about. And
oh
then you
yeah.
talk about something, and then it's like, I remember specifically, like me and Sean both were like, "What are you talking about? Where are you going with this?" It just went around and around and around, and then at the end of it, after like 10, 15 minutes of arguing and yelling and conversations going nowhere, it's like she would either storm out or she'd storm back to her room, or you're just so frustrated because you don't even know how to make sense of what you just talked about. And I
Yeah.
remember a lot of those kind of situations too.
Yeah, there are a lot of those conversations. Yeah, it's like she just you're trying to convince somebody who's of the right mind and they're not of the right mind.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and I know we were in it because we tried how many times to do that, and yet you couldn't. And yet
yeah.
I still think I don't know, looking back, I think we fell into that trap too often, was trying to convince her when we couldn't.
Yeah. But what else did you know? I mean, one, we didn't really know how to manage or handle this because
No.
nobody ever said, "Hey, this is what this is like. So when you're dealing with this, you have to do this, don't do this." I don't remember anybody ever giving mom and dad guidance or us guidance or anything on how to actually manage and handle it. And even however many times she went in there, I don't remember them wanting to meet with the family and say, "Hey, this is how you need to handle this," or give us any guidance. And
Yeah.
now looking back, like that seems so unfair that you don't have a family that can get information from the right people to help you go through that. The last time she was in, I do remember because at that point, I remember going with mom to, I think, pick her up. I think we visited her once or twice towards the end when she was like in the group apartment at the hospital and she was getting close to coming out. And I remember going there and we did talk to like the counselors or whoever it was that was working with her, and maybe at that point they told us a little bit, but I still don't remember anybody really saying, "Hey, this is how you need to deal with this or deal with her." It was just kind of like, "Hey, she got through it. We cleared her. We wrote her off. Now she's ready for the next phase, and she can go on her own."
Yeah. Yeah. It was
And I don't even remember how. Do you remember how long she was in there? At times, was it like a year or 6 months or 2 years
I
or?
think the longest, I'm pretty sure she went into the Trenton Psychiatric Hospital twice. And I think the one of
That's
those
what I
times
remember.
was like a
Yeah,
year and a half. I think it
it
was a
was that
really
long.
long time.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, that's my memory. I could be off on that,
Yeah,
but it was a
it's
long
hard to
time.
remember actually the details.
Yeah. And then when she came out of that one, I think the last time is when they set her up in her own
The
little
apartment where
apartment.
she ended up. Yeah,
Yep. And
but that one But that one was pretty bad too because before she went in for that one, she had been working again. 'Cause I know she was doing nursing again. I don't know how she was, but she was doing nursing for a while until she started getting bad again. And then I don't know if she stopped because she kind of either got fired or couldn't hold the job.
yeah,
And then
she's
that's
living in
when
a
that,
car.
yeah, she got kicked out of her apartment. So she was living in her car. And that
Yeah.
was hard too because, that's a situation where I'm
You want to
glad for
help
mom
her.
and dad's sake, they didn't just bring her back in because it would
Yeah.
have destroyed them.
Hmm.
And yeah,
And I don't
so
think people realize, unless you've seen it and lived with it,
yeah,
how hard it is,
yeah,
and how dangerous it is, because it's not just somebody that's in your home, but they can go downstairs in the middle of the night, turn the stove on, and walk away, and you got open flames there all night.
yeah.
Like, I mean, they just don't. They're not thinking clearly. Unless you lock them in the room or something. Like there's no way to. to do it. It
Yeah,
just
you
you're
can't really
the no,
contain them. Yeah,
no, and
and even for mom and dad, I mean, like, I can't even imagine the mental anguish and aging that put on them for going
yeah,
through that and the stress of that. So of course you don't want to have them be around that and experience that for any longer than they have to.
yeah. Plus, they're dealing. I mean, at that point, they're dealing with their own parents getting older and all those
Yeah, because then
issues.
I
And
remember the one time I think I forget if we had to either kick her out because grandma was coming to live with us,
yeah, I
or
think
if
that was true. I
or
think,
yeah, or if she couldn't come back home because now grandma was living with us and we didn't have any
yeah,
other space. So I mean, it was a good excuse of not being able to bring her back in because I remember specifically. I think all four of us or all five of us at least were talking about we can't let mom and dad have this burden anymore
yeah.
because they got we got grandmom coming in to live here. They're getting older themselves. It's just too much. And when does it end?
And again, it's hard for people unless you've been in it to see
Yeah,
it. And
and it seems not that we've experienced that part of it, and I know a lot of people have, and I can't imagine how they deal with that too. Is somebody who's in the family with an addictive lifestyle. It seems
yeah,
similar. I don't know what it's like because
yeah,
we don't have somebody who's been alcohol or
yeah,
drug addicted, but it seems like a similar thing. They get to a point where they need help. You have to force them to get help. They get the help. They come out. They seem okay, and then they go off the wagon again, and it's the same cycle. So
yeah.
I never thought of it like that before with mental illness compared to, addiction problems, but it does seem very similar pattern.
I'm sure the patterns are similar. I'm wondering how different it is in terms of when it's addiction. Sometimes they don't. It's not that they don't. Well, they don't see it because they're trying to ignore it or deny it, but they're of right mind. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I
Like even
guess when
though
they're
they
not
can't
high or
understand.
drunk, they are, but
That's true when they're off of that.
yeah,
But if everything's normal and they're just they drink all the time, but they're a little more of a sober moment, they can process to a certain extent.
yeah,
Where the conversations with her went round and round and round.
yeah, they were very
You're
bizarre.
talking about, hey Patty, where are you living? Oh, I don't have to worry about living. Because I'm doing a carnival and I'm going to plan this carnival, and this carnival is going to be great. And it's like, you're wow, where did we come from the carnival from? Where are you going to live?
Yeah, and it was always
And
sad because I mean she had multiple boyfriends. I mean, I remember a couple of them very well that she was dating for a while, but it was always she always even when she was dating them, it was always I always remember her having this whole mindset of like there's Prince Charming out there waiting for her. And she was
yeah,
always like this hopeless romantic because I mean
yeah, she was.
even like when I was dating Kim, like it was like she had her own opinion on that, and um even when my kids were starting to date and like same thing there, like, oh, are they sure they're in truly in love? Like love was a big thing for her, and I don't know if she just never found it, was always seeking it, but it was always that Prince Charming's out there for her. She knows it, and she's convinced that she's gonna find Prince Charming one day, and
Yeah, she
she never
really
did.
bought into that Disney
Yeah,
lie that someday somebody's going to come rescue you, and that whole
sweep her off
lie
her feet and drag her away, and
and that lie that there's one person out there for you. I think
yeah,
a lot of people fall into that lie, and we
yeah,
get sidetracked a lot. But a lot of people do, and it's like, come on, what are the odds? Think about it. There's 7 billion, 8 billion people on the planet. What are the odds? Come on, you choose somebody. But anyway, yeah, she had this idea that she's going to meet the right one, and the right one's going to change her life, and to extremes, to the
yeah.
extreme that this person is going to save her. So you brought up your kids. Like, how did your kids interact with all this?
Well,
I
I
mean, I
mean,
definitely want to talk about some of her positive things because there are
yeah,
some really
yeah.
cool things that she did. But
Well, I think for me, I mean, I'm the youngest. Most of my kids are younger than everybody else's for the most part. But the conversation came up after she had passed, and we were at her funeral and service and everything. And of course, it's easier to ask then, like, what do you guys remember of her? And my boys being older, they remember her at times when she was okay, but I think they all kind of remember her as the odd Aunt Patty. She just was always different.
okay,
And I don't think they've ever experienced her when she was really clear. Maybe the boys did when she was clearer the last time she came out of the hospital, but it
I mean,
still wasn't the same.
and she had to be off for what, the last 10 years, at least 12 years. I
I
mean,
think
I've
I
only
think she was out for 10 years this last time, yeah.
okay. So
She's
yeah, in
been
all
out of
those
the
10 years
yeah.
was never
And
really back to.
she was really I mean, once she got the apartment when she first came out, like, again, just like every other time, she was good for a while.
Yeah,
I mean, I think, and we've discussed this, I think probably the last 3, at least, maybe 4 years, we all started to see kind of a fade
it got
again
really bad.
of
Yeah,
everything. And, you can't say anything to her. You ask her, are you taking your medication? I don't need medications. Somebody told
yeah.
me it's not medications that I need. I don't have bipolar. I have stage fright. And, that was one of the conversations she had. She was convinced that a friend of hers told her it was stage fright and she never had bipolar. So why would she need medications if it's stage fright? She's just got to get over stage fright. So, I mean,
Yeah,
those are the conversations you're dealing with at times where there's no reality.
and one of her conversations she had with me toward probably the last few months was, yeah, she's been diagnosed all these years wrong. She's been, all the drugs were wrong because all she has is PTSD from going back to being held up at
Oh,
work when she was, yeah, going back to that.
which is interesting because I think I've heard her in the last several years also say that somebody told her she was suffering from PTSD from, again, stage fright, from not
Stage
performing well
fright.
or something. And yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So it depends on the day you ask her, and it depends on what she's thinking that
and
day.
a lot of
Yeah, it
her,
was always.
things we had conversations. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it was always interesting with her because even as I shared, I had done her eulogy, or whether you want to call it that or not, I don't know. I spoke at her funeral, and when I was
Yeah.
thinking of things, it would even up till the end, I didn't get it right. She would always change her name depending on the phase she was going through. So sometimes it was
Yes, she
Patricia, and other
did.
times it was Trish, and other times it was Patty, and then it was Pat, and like she was always moving it around. You never knew quite how to catch it, and even up till the end, I usually called her Pat, and she would yell at me sometimes toward the end, be like, "It's Patty."
Yeah, she
And
she yelled at me too
that
for
was just
that.
her personality. But you kind of never knew. Like her name changed as her personality changed. It seemed like at times.
Yeah. Well, then even how you spell it, because I mean, as kids, I remember it was
Yeah.
Patti, and I was like, okay,
And
that's
then it went to
different, but that's cool.
Patty.
Yeah, it's like, oh my goodness. So, yeah, she
Yeah.
changed a lot of stuff. But her, and it's probably part of the illness of her regressing all the time. But she was totally fascinated with a lot of the childhood memories where, she wanted us all to be singers, sort of like the
Yeah.
Von Trapp family, we're all going to go off into make our millions singing around the country kind of thing.
Well,
Um,
wasn't it only like a few years ago, recently, that she literally thought that we were all going to go on tour? Tour or doing what? I have
yeah,
no
yeah,
idea. I mean, she always envisioned us to be like a Von Trapp family. We never were,
yeah,
but um,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
she
she
she was
tried to
always
convince me
enamored by
that,
that.
yeah, your job, what you're doing, you should go. You have such talent in singing. You should be a singer. And it's like, no, I like what I'm doing. I don't want to quit. I mean, I like singing too, but not like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I took guitar
Yeah,
lessons when I was like in junior high for a couple of years and never really did much more with it. And she's always
yeah,
telling, "Oh, you got to pick up that guitar again." I'm like, I haven't picked it up in 20 years, so it's not just going to come back. And I don't really have that much interest in it right now. And she's always wanted somebody to play an instrument or do something. It's interesting. She never really played an instrument herself that I remember, unless she took piano
no,
lessons.
she never did learn. No, singing
Yeah,
lessons. She was taking singing
yeah.
lessons, and it was interesting.
But I
She had
mean,
no money, but she would afford
well,
singing lessons.
that's what was wild with her too. It's like even through all the phases, and I don't know if it was more often when she was in a good phase or a bad phase when it happened more. But I mean, God bless her for her courage. She never apologized for who she was. She was very different.
No,
Her clothing always
no,
showed that from some of the outfits she wore. And
yeah,
she was unapologetic for who she was, and that was a cool trait.
yeah,
And like, I admire her for just doing what she wanted to do regardless of what everybody thought. And I think most people around thought there's something very off with her. But
yeah,
I know she'd go to like bars and just like start singing with bands. And
yeah.
I don't know how she did that.
She did,
I don't know. We don't even know how she got around half the
and she
time because she didn't have a car since she got
and she
out this
couldn't
last time over the
sing.
last 10 years. Yeah, she had a difficult time singing.
She she did. She could keep a pitch, and but she went out there,
No,
yeah.
but she
And I
didn't
think, and
care.
that
She
was
just went
one of
out there. She was convinced she could.
yeah. But again, go back to some of the challenges. I know again these past probably 5 years or whatever where it was harder. She wanted to perform so much that she looked for an audience, and
Yeah.
as difficult as it was for her to like have normal conceptions of reality and all that kind of stuff,
Hmm.
she was very manipulative of, if I'm in this situation, I can easily get a chance to sing in front of this crowd that I don't even know. Like, so
Yeah.
it's a birthday party. I mean, our daughter, our daughter-in-law's shower, bridal shower is like, oh, here's an opportunity. I'm going to sing,
Yeah.
and it was very awkward. And I mean, we got to the point where I was warning family members, if she was coming to your party, you have to set it up. You have to watch this because it will happen before you know it. And the next thing you know, you're sitting there, everybody's singing there in the room, listening to three or four songs because she won't stop. And then it becomes awkward, where if you can avoid it, if you can sidetrack her,
Yeah.
if you can not get her to do it, you will avoid a lot. And again, it's hard. And I don't think people really understand how, what a challenge it was.
Yeah. And she would get angry too. Like when, if you would try to stop her from that or say, okay,
Yeah.
that's good. We're going to move on now. We don't need another song. Like she'd get very angry about that. And I mean, at least at times I remember, I don't think it was always that way, but there was definitely times I think when she was probably worse and off her meds and not really being very well anymore, that
Mhm.
I mean, she would cause some really awkward moments in arguing with somebody because you said something.
Yeah. And you don't want to, like, I remember, and I think it was with, our son Victor and Teresa when I got married. I think I was nervous, literally, and
Mhm.
realistically nervous that she was going to come to the wedding and somehow get up to the DJ or something like
Yep.
that. And she's good at it. Again, she looks for the ways to manipulate
Mhm.
her way in. And the next thing you know, she's like, well, I guess I got to let this person have the mic. And next thing you know, everybody's out there, and now she's singing, and you're like, oh no, no, what do you do? And now you create an embarrassing moment, not just for her,
But
but
for the
it's
special
difficult.
occasion, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so, I feel like in a lot of ways, probably maybe because mom and dad were gone, I guess it took on the role of, we got to protect people around her because she can hurt a situation, she can hurt people in the process.
yeah.
Um, Now on the flip side, you start hitting on it, but there was, I mean, just think of some of her great characteristics that even in the struggling with her disability, however bad that was, she just had this heart to really help out to people. Like, she
Yeah.
just wanted to give, right?
Well, it was neat at her funeral service, and I didn't really know they did that. They had a nursing guard that came out and said a prayer, and they were all dressed up in like old
The old
time nursing
old man,
outfits,
I
and
know, and
and
that's how
it,
she
it was
graduated.
just really cool. Yeah, really. It was just really cool that they do that and recognized her, and it was helpful for not only us as her family to kind of remember that, but for people who didn't really know her that was there, for us and support us, just to see that, like, she really did care about people. She got into nursing because she wanted to help people. She cared about people, and she was. I mean, she was a pediatric nurse for a long time, and there was even a family there that had her as their child's nurse for years ago when he was young with a lot of problems, and they were there then to see her. So,
That was so neat.
she definitely
That was so
touched a
neat to
lot of
see.
people's lives in different ways. And the the other uniqueness is, she lived in Ewing, right where I am, and like it was almost like people in Ewing knew her because she walked everywhere.
She
She would
did.
think nothing but to talk to people anywhere,
Yeah,
and then she'd always have a story about meeting somebody on the street and talking to them, and
yeah,
you know, she was definitely around the town a lot.
yeah.
She was kind of the walker.
And she would tell, like if I was in a normal conversation for a little while, she would say, I ran into such and such, and I told them, about what you're doing
Yeah,
and your kids, and she really kept connected. She had a really heart to keep connected with dad's side of the family.
yeah,
For some reason, there's a bias there, but it. I mean, she reached out to all of them, and there were phone calls because she didn't figure out how to get on Facebook, so she couldn't do that.
yeah.
And
Well, even our old neighbor growing up. I mean, she
Yeah.
kept in touch with her all these
She
years.
did.
Actually, both neighbors on both sides of us.
Yeah.
And just to know that all these years later, she's still kind of talking to them, texting
Yeah.
them. Um, it's yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. And I'm grateful for the people that like they didn't see all the struggles and the challenges that we all faced as a family, but they just sort of took
No, and
her little quirks and had a
yeah,
relationship with her at a surface level, and yet it lasted years because they just knew her at a certain level.
but I think some people that did have that surfacey, I think they still knew there was something
Deeper.
underlying in there, but
Yeah.
they didn't have enough deep communication with her to really let it affect them. Probably
Yeah.
that's I would imagine because they were willing enough to still communicate with her.
Yeah. So if you could, and I know the reason I want to talk about this because I, there's a lot of families out there that deal with this stuff. You
Yeah,
know, if you could take a mulligan and go back and do something different in terms of Patty, again, you know, she's not of right mind so often.
yeah.
Is there something you would do? Is there something I don't
Well,
know?
it's interesting because I was just quickly just just for the sake of this conversation looking up some stats. Um, and these are from 2024. 26% of adults in the United States experience mental illness each year.
Wow,
Over
a lot.
60 million individuals. Children are 10% of that population. And the common ones are anxiety of 40%, depression 30, substance abuse 15, and bipolar 10%. Um, so I think for me, you know, she always, she lived closest to me geographically. She would walk over here. I mean, for many, many years since she lived there, she would walk over. She'd drop little notes in our mailbox for the kids. She'd leave little treats for the kids. She put a balloon on our mailbox if it was somebody's birthday. So
Mhm.
I think she was really trying to take on that mom role, that grandmother role for my kids.
Yeah.
There, she went through a long phase there where she was cooking us a meal like once a week almost. She would bring us a
Wow.
meal.
Wow.
Now, unfortunately, she wasn't always the best cook, but I always felt guilty if I didn't, she'd come over with these random, bizarre things, combinations together that you just didn't even think about. And, most of my family wouldn't even touch them. And I looked and thought, you know what? I got to try it just to say I tried it. And,
Yeah.
some of the stuff was actually pretty good. Other stuff was, you didn't quite know what to make of it. But she had that like motherly instinct that she wanted to be part of something.
Yeah.
And it's hard when something like this happens. And again, it was she died of a stroke, so it was quick, it was sudden, it wasn't something that we were expecting. But she, you know, thinking through those times, there was lots of those times, and there was a lot of times where I would ask her, do you want to stay for dinner? And sometimes she wouldn't, sometimes she would. It's hard not to regret,
Mm.
when something like this happens, it's hard not to look back and say we should have done this, we should have done that, we should have done more of this. So I guess for me, the mulligan I would say in that is I wish I could go back and the times when it seemed inconvenient because of who she was and how she was, to say, hey, come on over for dinner. Why don't you stay for dinner? Different little things like that. I would love to do that over a little bit better than what we did. And again, people that don't know her, that wasn't an easy thing. It wasn't like you just
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
"Oh, come on over," because a lot of times she found a
No.
zillion excuses to say, "No, no, no, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine." Even if the one time I know my wife always brings that one up. I offered. She walked over, and then this like massive storm was coming through, and I offered to give her a ride home, and she's like, "No, no, no, it's fine, I'll walk." And there was nothing I could do to convince her to get in the car and let me drive
Yeah.
her,
No.
2 minutes
Nope.
away. She was going to walk, and it just started downpouring and everything. So there was a lot of that stubbornness in there. So a lot of times
Yeah.
when we would want to say, do you want to come over for dinner? Do you want to stay? Any of those kinds of things. It wasn't always just a quick, easy answer, but I wish I could go back and just offer more of that,
Mm.
or, engage with her at times more than have the awkwardness of what the conversation would look like.
Yeah.
And it's always easy when there's a death to kind of look back that way and say, oh, we should have done more, should have done that. But that would probably be my biggest mulligan.
Mm.
How about you?
You know, we've lived further away, so it's been a little harder. And I tried to call her more, and Honestly, I thought I did pretty good at it. I mean, I'm not like I don't have any regrets there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the worst one was I think we had a really really big fight because it was one of those spiral things that I don't even think I had any part of the conversation. She just went on for about 45 minutes. So, and that was our last conversation really. Like, because after that, I was like, okay, she doesn't even want to talk to me. She hung up the phone on me. Like, um, and so that's a little hard because that was the last few months, and I sort of just pushed it aside, saying, you know what, that was just that's how she was, and I can't
Yeah.
be angry at it, or angry at me. I do think, and I probably should have just tried harder though when I was anywhere in that area to okay, wait a minute, can I take another 2 hours? And I know because I would come, visit you at work there when I was or had to get car repair. um, that's a whole nother story, but I could have drove that half hour to go take her out to lunch or something and then come back, and I didn't.
Yeah.
Um, I might not even be able to get in touch with her, who knows
Yeah.
but I could have tried, and there, I think, yeah, looking back, I would have taken a mulligan there and say, yeah, I should have done that a few more times. So
Yeah. Well, I think our hearts go out to anybody who has dealt with mental illness with family members, is dealing with mental illness with family members, has had, a sibling pass away. It is hard. And, our sister Patty had her own struggles. But amidst all those struggles, she still did love her family very, very much. The family was very, very important to her. And in a lot of ways, we were all she had. But we're just glad that we had her in our lives, as unique as a relationship as it was, and as difficult as it was at times. She was still part of our family and made us the six that we are as kids. So we just want to dedicate this episode to our sister Patty, who's no longer with us. And we just pray that she is completely clear now where she is, hopefully with our Heavenly Father. And we just dedicate this episode to our sister Patty Mulligan. Thanks.
hey, we know everyone can use a second chance or a do-over, so take a mulligan, try again. Thanks so much for joining with us today. Make sure you follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Like, click, and subscribe.